Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be making some fun summer cards using products from scrapbook.com. I recently shared a video using scrapbook.com's Sunkissed pattern paper. This is such a cute collection, perfect for summer and beach cards. I love the collection so much I decided I would make a few more cards. This time I'm also using the brand new summertime die set. Look at all these fun images and they coordinate with the Sunkissed pattern paper. I'll also be using their Hello Summer stamp set, and I have the coordinating dies. This is a really fun stamp set. I love all the different summery sentiments. And it's fun to have the coordinating dies for not only the images, but also the sentiments. And if you're interested in any of the products I use in this video, I do have links in the description box. So let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. I will be using some card sketches for inspiration. If you're interested in any of the sketches I use, I share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. The link is in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. For my first card, the card sketch is from Sugar Pea Designs. This is Sugar Sketch number 47. I selected this fun pattern paper that has lots of different beach images, and I'm layering that piece on some purple smooth cardstock, and this is included in scrapbook.com's Purple's Smooth Cardstock paper pad. For the narrow rectangle at the top of the card, using some of the yellow tone-on-tone pattern paper, and I'm layering it on some yellow smooth cardstock. And this yellow color is part of scrapbook.com's Yellow's Smooth Cardstock paper pad. I will be using a few different cardstock collections from scrapbook.com for the cardstock layers. This card will be featuring 5 of the new die images. I have the little bucket and shovel, and I'm also using the outline piece for each of the images. It's nice to have the option for that outline piece, or you can use the images without it. I cut out all of the outline pieces from some white cardstock. For the pair of sunglasses, I used some green cardstock for the frame and silver mirror cardstock for the lenses. And this is included in scrapbook.com's holographic mirror paper pad. I'm using the same green cardstock color for the shovel. I used a soft orange cardstock color for the starfish, and this color is included in the Sunkissed paper pad. Then the final image is another shell, and I used some pink cardstock. And I believe the pink color is from the Peppermint Smooth Cardstock paper pad. So there are the 5 images all assembled and on the white background. For a sentiment, I've already stamped out Happy Summer, and I did cut it out using the coordinating dies. I'll flip over all of the images, and I am popping them up using some thin foam dimension, using scrapbook.com's small squares in the 1mm thickness, so they'll add just a little extra dimension. To fit behind some of those narrow areas, I will need to cut some of the small squares in half. Now I'll add all 5 of the images on the narrow yellow strip at the top of the card. Start with the pink shell on the very left side, then I'll add the blue bucket, putting the green shovel right next to the bucket, overlapping it just a tiny bit. The sunglasses will go on the very right side, and I am putting them up just a little bit since I'll be adding a banner underneath in that lower right-hand corner. Then I'll add the final image, the starfish. Using a small scrap piece of the purple cardstock, I'll cut a banner. First cut a fishtail on the bottom, then I'll cut the right side in slightly at an angle, flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. And the only reason I flip it over is because I'm not very good at cutting that angle on the other side. So if I just flip it over, I'm doing that same angle cut. Before adhering it down, I will put some scrap cardstock pieces at the bottom of the banner, since most of it will be going off of that yellow panel. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. For the sentiment, I'll also be popping it up using the same small squares in the 1mm thickness. I probably should have grabbed the larger squares, but since I had the small squares close to me, I figured I would just use those. I'll make sure to get good coverage on the back. Remove the release paper. I'll adhere the word summer down first, then I'll put the word happy right above it. I stamped the sentiments on some white shimmer cardstock, so it has this beautiful shimmery finish. The ink I use for the word summer is Catherine Pooler's Clay Mask, and the ink color I use for the word happy is Honeybee Stamp's Intense Black ink. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 2, the card sketch is from MFT. This is number 702. I'm using a die set from Pretty Pink Posh for the Eyelet Rectangle. I used the largest size, and I cut out the light green pattern paper with the white palm trees. I'll put adhesive on the back. I use Scrapbook.com's Deluxe Adhesive Roller, and I'm also adding some Barely Art glue along that outside edge. That'll help it lay nice and flat. I'll layer this piece on some craft cardstock. And I did place a large acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dried. Now I'll put more adhesive on the back, layer this piece on some white shimmer cardstock. Then I'll add my card front onto a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. The image I'll be using for this card is the sandcastle. Most of the images on the summertime die set are just a few pieces. The sandcastle does have a few more pieces, but it's still very easy to assemble. I also cut out an oval die cut, and using some of the yellow tone-on-tone pattern paper, I cut just a small piece of that oval, and using a pair of scissors, I'll cut a curve, creating some sand for the sandcastle to sit upon. And I know my sand is not the same color as the sandcastle, but I wanted to have some contrast between the two pieces. I did add a little bit of ink along the top edge of the sand. I used Catherine Pooler's Goldenrod ink color. And this is a brand new color from Catherine Pooler. For the pieces of the sandcastle, I used 3 different shades of brown cardstock, and these are all from Scrapbook.com's Neutral Smooth Cardstock Paper Pad. I am adding a little bit of ink along the edge of the larger pieces. I used Distress Oxide Vintage Photo ink color. And I'm doing all of the inking and gluing on Scrapbook.com's White Project Grip Mat. This was originally a 12 by 12 size. I simply trimmed it down so it would fit on my craft table a little easier. Now it's time to assemble the sandcastle. I'll start with the background piece, add the little triangle at the very top, the little tower. Then I'll add that wide piece, I guess it would be the second story of the sandcastle. And then the front 2 pieces, one on the right and one on the left. There's also a tiny little flag that you can attach at the top of the sandcastle. I use one of the lighter brown colors for the little stick and the soft peach pattern paper for the flag. I know that color is very light, but I will be brightening it here in just a moment. Now I'll attach the door and the 5 windows. For the door, I'm picking it up using my pair of reverse tweezers, but for the windows, they are very small. So I'll first add a tiny drop of Barely Art glue, and I'm picking up those teeny tiny die cut pieces using the wax tip end of Scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. Since I'm using glue, I do have a little bit of wiggle time to get all the windows adjusted so they're nice and straight. Well, fairly straight. Since it's a sandcastle, it's not exactly going to be all perfect and square. To brighten up that flag and add just a tiny bit of sparkle, I'm using a glitter brush from scrapbook.com. I believe this is the coral color. Now I'll glue on that little sand hill at the bottom of the oval. Then I'll put glue on the back of the sandcastle and adhere it in place. For a sentiment, I've already stamped and cut this out, Sending Sunshine. The ink color I used for the sentiment is Catherine Pooler's Goldenrod color. I also cut out a second outline piece for the sentiment from some gold holographic paper from scrapbook.com's holographic mirror paper pad. I'll glue the two pieces together, offsetting them slightly so you can see that beautiful gold sparkle underneath the sentiment. Now I'll add the image and the sentiment onto my card. I'll start with the oval image, put glue on the back and adhere it toward the top portion. Decided for this card not to pop it up with foam dimension. Next I'll put glue on the back of the sentiment and adhere it underneath the sandcastle. So there is my finished card, and I did make two using this design. I love how this one turned out. The sandcastle image is so cute. Now moving on to card design number 3. The card sketch is from Cards TV. This is sketch number 32. For the background of my card, I have this light purple, sort of a pinkish color pattern paper with lots of shells. For the narrow strip on the left side of the card, using some of the light orange peach color, and this is pattern paper that's included in the Sunkissed paper collection. For the wider strip, using more of the yellow tone-on-tone paper. Put adhesive on the back, adhere both of those strips in place. Now I'll layer the background piece on some soft purple pattern paper. This is also one of the solids that's included in the Sunkissed paper pad. I'll put adhesive on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. For the 3 squares on the right side of the card, you could just cut those with your paper trimmer. I decided to use a square die set from Waffle Flower. Sometimes my cutting isn't exactly perfect, so it's nice to have some square dies. I'll be layering the white squares on some purple cardstock squares, and I also used one of the dies from Waffle Flower. If you purchase the nesting squares and also the additional squares, you'll have that perfect matted layer that's not too wide. I'm using glue to adhere the 2 square pieces together. That way I have a little bit of time to get them adjusted and evenly spaced. Before adhering the 3 squares on the right side, I am adding a scrap piece of pattern paper on the very right side of the square where it goes off of that yellow strip. And that'll help it stay at the same level. Now I'll attach all 3 squares, and I'm laying them out first. I'll start by adhering the square in the center. Then I'll add the one at the bottom, and then finally this square at the top. Now I'll set aside the card and start working on the images that I'll be putting inside each of the squares. I'll start with the crab, and I love this little crab. It's so cute. I use some orange cardstock, and this is from the Sprinkle Smooth cardstock paper pad, and I use black cardstock for the eyes. And those are all of the pieces for the crab, super easy. For the flip-flops, I use the blue and white polka dot pattern paper for the main flip-flop portion and some pink cardstock for the strap. I'll also be adding a pink shell and a yellow starfish. Since I'll be adding the images on the white square, I'm not using any of the outline pieces for the images. For the sentiment, I've already stamped and cut the 2 pieces out. I'm adding the word hello, and it's so fun that the L's are palm trees. And I'm also adding love you to the beach and back. Using the outline die, I cut out a second piece, used some of the gold holographic paper. I'll layer the two pieces together to create that gold sparkle underneath the sentiments. I will be popping up the sentiments and all of the images using more of Scrapbook.com's small foam squares in the 1mm thickness. I will need to cut some of those squares in half to fit behind the tiny areas of the image die cuts. The foam I'm using behind the sentiments, I did grab the large foam squares from Scrapbook.com. These are also the 1mm thickness. If you like a little more dimension, Scrapbook.com also has their foam available in 2mm and 3mm thickness. I like to add just that tiny bit of dimension, so the 1mm foam is my favorite. Once I have good coverage on the back, I'll remove the release paper and I'll start by adding the images inside the squares. I'm putting the crab in the center square. The shells will go in the upper square and the flip-flops will go in the lower square. Now I'll remove the release paper behind the sentiment, add the word hello, and I'm putting it just underneath that middle square. Then I'll add the rest of the sentiment shifted slightly toward the right, so the very right side of that sentiment is sitting on the lower square. For a final finishing touch, I'm using a clear glitter brush marker from Scrapbook.com, adding a little bit of sparkle on the shells, the crab's claws, and also the flip-flops. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now here's another look at the 6 summer cards I made using Scrapbook.com's adorable Sunkissed pattern paper, along with an assortment of their stamps and dies. I love how these cards turned out. Fun summery cards that will hopefully brighten up someone's day. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. And if you missed my first video using the Sunkissed paper pad, I will link it at the end of this video if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.